Right, so we're back and ready to dive into a story that, well, it's gotten a lot of attention and it's definitely got some twists and turns to it, right? The Tesla Cybertruck explosion in Las Vegas happened New Year's Day.
Yeah.
Initially seemed like just a straightforward accident, but things are never that simple, are they?
No, not at all. And especially not in this case because the victim, well, he wasn't just some random person.
Right.
This was Matthew Livelsberger. He was an active duty U.S. Army Green Beret. And to make things even more strange, the truck was packed with explosives.
Yeah, I mean, that's what really caught our attention, right? So that immediately raises some questions like, what was he doing with all those explosives? Was this an isolated incident or could there be more to it?
Exactly. Lots of questions.
So let's start with the basics, right? What do we know about the explosion itself?
Sure. So it happened early morning, January 1st, 2025.
New Year's Day
Yeah, right outside the Trump International Hotel.
in Las Vegas.
Las Vegas.
I mean, talk about a way to start the year.
Yeah. Witnesses said there was a huge blast. Debris was flying everywhere.
Yeah, I saw some pictures. It was pretty intense.
Yeah, and unfortunately, there was one fatality, and 7 other people nearby, they had minor injuries.
Yeah, it's a miracle more people weren't hurt, honestly.
Oh, absolutely. Considering, I mean, you know what was in the truck, right?
Yeah.
And this is an interesting detail. Investigators noted that even though the explosion was really powerful, the walls of the truck bed, they were mostly intact.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which suggests the blast was directed upwards. And that makes sense given what they found inside, right?
Yeah, makes sense.
Firework mortars, fuel canisters, and a bunch of other, well, they just call them other devices.
Okay, so we have a powerful explosion. We have a unique vehicle, the Cybertruck, obviously.
Of course.
And our victim had a very particular set of skills, we'll say.
Definitely.
So who was Matthew Livelsberger? Can you tell us a little bit more about his background?
Well, Livelsberger, he had a long military career. I mean, he was a Green Beret since 2006. So that means that he was part of an elite unit that specialized in some really intense stuff, you know? Unconventional warfare, counterterrorism, that kind of thing.
I mean, that's the real deal.
Oh, yeah. His service record shows deployments to Afghanistan, Ukraine, Tajikistan, Georgia, even Congo. And he received a bunch of awards, including 2 Bronze Stars.
Oh.
Yeah, one of those Bronze Stars even had a Valor device, which means he did something really heroic.
So this is not just some guy who knew how to handle explosives. I mean, this guy was a highly trained, decorated soldier.
Exactly.
And he was on approved leave at the time of the explosion.
That's right.
So was this incident connected to his military service somehow, even though officially he was off duty?
I mean, it's definitely a possibility. His training and experience would have given him access to, well, knowledge and resources that most people just wouldn't have, right?
Right.
And this is where it gets even more complicated. The FBI, they searched a home in Colorado Springs.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and they said it was connected to the explosion, but so far they've been pretty tight-lipped about what they were looking for.
Okay, so now we have a mystery on top of a mystery.
Pretty much.
And here's where the story takes an even stranger turn.
Oh, yeah.
Just hours before the explosion in Las Vegas, there was a horrific truck attack in New Orleans. A man named Shamsuddin Bahar Jabbar. He drove a truck into a crowd, killing at least 15 people before being shot by police.
Oh, wow, I hadn't heard about that.
Yeah, awful. And it turns out that both Livelsberger and Jabbar spent time at Fort Liberty.
Oh, Fort Liberty.
Yeah, you know, formerly Fort Bragg.
Right.
So that's another potential connection, right? Although officials have said that there's no overlap in their assignments there, so it's hard to say what that means, if anything.
It's just another piece of the puzzle, I guess.
Right, we have to consider all the angles here. Officially, investigators haven't confirmed a motive for either of these incidents or if they're even connected at all. But the timing and the fact that trucks were involved in both events, well,
Yeah.
it's definitely fueled a lot of speculation, right?
Yeah, of course. And then you can't forget a Tesla Cybertruck was involved. So, of course, another important voice weighed in.
Oh, yeah. What did Elon Musk have to say about all this?
Well, Musk, he took to X, you know, what used to be Twitter,
Yeah.
to address the explosion. And he said that it was caused by the explosives in the truck bed. So nothing to do with the vehicle itself.
Hmm?
He even highlighted that all the data from the Cybertruck was normal leading up to it, what they call vehicle telemetry.
Oh, the telemetry, right. So, like, the car itself didn't malfunction or anything like that.
Right, exactly.
Well, I mean, that's good, I guess, for Tesla.
Yeah, for Tesla, not so good for, well, you know,
Yeah.
for anyone near the truck.
For this situation, yeah. But it does raise some interesting questions, though, right? especially about self-driving cars, which are obviously becoming, more and more common. I mean, if someone can pack a car with explosives without the car, like noticing or triggering any alarms,
Yeah.
doesn't that make you at least a little bit wary of this whole self-driving thing?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it makes you think about, the vulnerabilities of any vehicle, really, whether
Yes.
it's driven by a person or AI. I mean, this situation, it really underscores the need for, better security measures to prevent unauthorized access and also just to be able to detect dangerous cargo, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a scary thought. Okay, so we've got this decorated Green Beret, a truck full of explosives, and a possible connection to another violent incident, all happening within hours of each other.
Right.
But his motives are still totally unclear. What are your thoughts on what Livelsberger might have been thinking?
It's so tough to speculate, especially without more information,
Yeah.
I mean, we do know that Livelsberger, he was highly trained in unconventional warfare, and he had experience in a lot of different conflict zones.
Right, all over the world.
Yeah, so could it be related to something from his past, maybe something that he experienced during one of his deployments?
Hmm.
Or was this something completely personal, unrelated to his military service? We just don't know.
It's hard to say, right?
Yeah.
And what about that FBI search in Colorado Springs? What could they have been looking for?
Well, maybe they were searching for evidence about those explosives, like where he got them from,
Right.
or if he had been planning anything, or maybe they were looking for clues about, Livelsberger's state of mind.
Like a journal, something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Any writings, any communications, anything that might give them insight into his motivations.
It's frustrating, though, isn't it? Like, we have all these questions, but we just don't have a lot of answers. It seems like, I don't know, we're just bombarded with information these days. But sometimes the most important details, they just remain elusive.
Yeah, that's true. And it reminds us that even with all the technology and resources we have, there are still mysteries out there that, well, we may never be able to solve. I mean, in this case, it's a puzzle. We have a highly trained individual, access to explosives, a possible link to another violent incident, and his motives, they're just unclear.
It's like trying to put together one of those jigsaw puzzles, but with half the pieces missing. You can kind of see the outline of the image.
Yeah,
But the full picture, it's still obscured.
exactly. And that's why it's so important to be cautious about jumping to conclusions, right?
Yeah.
I mean, without concrete evidence, it's easy to fill in the gaps with our own assumptions and let our imaginations run wild.
That's a good point. It seems like we have this case of someone who, I mean, he dedicated his life to service, but then he potentially, made some very different choices later on. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it really makes you think about, I don't know, human nature and how complex it is. I mean, even people who, dedicate their lives to service, they can sometimes find themselves on a very different path.
And you never really know what's going on in someone's head.
Right. No, you don't. This incident, I think it really shows us that there are so many gray areas in life.
Yeah.
I mean, we like to put people in these neat little boxes, heroes or villains.
Right.
But the reality is that people are complicated.
Yeah, for sure.
Someone can be capable of incredible acts of courage, but also be susceptible to, making bad choices or struggling with things internally, things we don't see.
Totally.
It's not always black and white, is it?
No, not at all. So what can we take away from all of this?
Yeah.
We've explored this tragic explosion. We've learned about this decorated soldier with a mysterious past.
Yeah.
And there's this unsettling possibility that it could be connected to another really awful event.
Yeah.
What are your final thoughts?
I think this case, it just reminds us that we live in this world with so much information
Yeah.
all the time, right? But just knowing the facts, that's not enough. Right? To really understand something, you have to be able to think critically, You have to be willing to question what you think you know.
And maybe accept that we won't get all the answers.
Yeah, exactly. Some mysteries might just never be fully solved.
Yeah, that's a good point. So it's a reminder to stay curious, to keep digging deeper, to look beyond just the headlines, and, to resist that urge to judge too quickly.
Right. And I think maybe the most important takeaway is just, to remember that people are complex.
Yeah.
Heroism and tragedy, I mean, they can exist in the same person.
Very well said. Well, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive. We hope you found this exploration insightful,
Yeah,
and maybe it gave you something to think about.
I hope so.
Be sure to tune in next time for more deep dives where we'll continue to unpack the stories that are shaping our world.
See you then.
All right, take care.